How's it going, guys? It's been a bit since I made a video, and I'm going to get back into it here by talking about this gorgeous sword by L.K. Chen, the Tang, which I have had now for several months, and I'm meaning to do a full official review on it, which I will still do. This is not that, but I think it will be part of it because I do want to talk about handling and some observations I've made in practicing and handling this sword over the past several months. So let's get into it. I love this sword. So that bias is probably going to play a huge role in my review of it. Basically, it marries a lot of things that I've done over the past several years really well, better than I thought it would. I knew it kind of would, but I didn't expect that it would this well. So, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I really like the finer, maneuverable point work of the Jian. It's more absorb and dish back quality rather than being a clashing sword. I really enjoy that sword, and I've worked with it the most. As far as Dao, I don't really have much experience with the regular single-handed hack and slash Chinese broadsword, as it's called nowadays. Never had one of those, never really trained with it, but a lot of Miao Dao, which of course is a much longer blade and handle, slightly curved Chinese saber that has very different wide slashing, twisting, thrusting mechanics and a lot of elaborate spine work that is very different from anything that you would see with a Jian or even a single-handed Dao. However, this really brings a lot of that stuff together very nicely, and it is sort of a nice compromise between all those things. And once again, I knew it kind of would be, but I didn't expect that it would be to this extent. So we'll talk about that now. For one, it makes a fantastic Jian. It's not a Jian. The handle shape is different. The blade balance is totally different. It is a Dao in every respect, but in terms of its overall profile and double-edged tip, you see, it's got that double-edged tip. It makes an excellent sword to be able to do some of that finer point work and maneuverability that you could use with a Jian. And check this out. Very easy to discreetly flip and be able to do all those lifts and back edge cuts, right? And because it's straight, it's very hard for an opponent to know which way it's facing. Because if it was curved, obviously, you'd be able to tell. You'd see it drooping downward. It's like, oh, okay, well, I know what they're going to do. Granted, you could very nicely do rising cuts from low guards here. Very nicely straight rising cuts without flipping the edge up. But this is not hard at all to be able to do sneaky cut angles. If I cut down this way, it's not hard at all for me just to turn this guy and flip right back up in a very Jian-like fashion and attack with that back edge and do my lifts up into wrists, lead leg, and snipe the back of that wrist there and turn relatively easily in the hand because the shape of this hilt allows for that very nicely. It's just a sort of a pinch, pivot, or with two hands you do it discreetly, right? So if you're in the middle of your bout, which I have not clashed with this blade obviously, but it wouldn't be hard at all to, again, cut, change, come back. Cut, change, come back. And reorient for sneaky back edge cuts of various kinds. So I really like the fact that this kind of disguises, I mean, it's a single edge sword, but if you're familiar with the Jian and you want to use a false edge attack, it's not at all hard just to flip this guy over and do it really quick and flip it back over or continue to do so. Again, lots of options that you have with that back edge, especially those, I think they're called Tiao cuts, stepping and snapping up. Anytime you cut one way, you can cut the other. You have double edge options with a discrete flip. So very cool. Flip, flip. Because it's straight, pretty hard to tell where it is. So I really like that about it. Second thing to note is I do consider this to be a true hand-and-a-half variety sword. Meaning, I do initially agree with most of the people who have reviewed this sword, and even LK Chen himself, I mostly see, he's using it one-handed. In a few videos I've seen him use it. I think that makes sense. It's a very good one-handed sword in that it's maneuverable enough and well-balanced enough to where, as a regular Dao, as a hack and slash, powerful cutting, chopping weapon, in one hand it works great. In two hands, I still think that this is kind of hand and a half, because I with a sword like this, unlike with a longer handled saber, where I'd be more likely to grab the sword and use it in an actual two-handed grip, when I use this sword with two hands, my hand is rather loose on the pommel. Mostly kind of almost pushing on it, guiding it for those jiao, those stirs, and when gripping, even to cut, it's kind of loose. Not like never grabbing, but my hand is always very flexible and ready to adapt to different positions. It also makes it very nice to do those, what I believe are called the Gaislin variety cuts in HEMA. I don't know what the Chinese equivalent of the term would be, but letting go, because it's not a big heavy sword, I can kind of do this nicely and recover pretty quickly. Let that hand go so that you have full range handle plus blade, especially anytime your guard is here on the non-dominant side and you throw one of these cuts, or indeed even thrust. You can do so in a very quick way and recover pretty quickly. So anytime we're here and I throw a cut, pretty easy for me just to bring it back, recover on the other side, and I'm not throwing something terribly committed per se. And a couple of notes on how I like to do that. Basically, when I thrust in that way, I like to use almost a no-spin knife throwing grip, if you're familiar with that, my index finger on the back like so. So when I thrust from here, I tend to use that type of grip because it feels, for some reason, just naturally kind of easier to control that way. And when I cut, I usually have this kind of grip with my thumb on the spine instead. So it's going to look more like this. So it's very easy to be able to throw that sneaky cut at long range and be able to recover it fairly quickly. So I really like that as well. It's not a very long sword, so if you can really make the most of its range by committing to a nice lunge here, full range, and be able to get back in and out pretty quickly, it has that versatility. Very, very nice, I think. And it's just small, like it's big enough to where you can capitalize on that range, but small and light enough to where it's not just going to be like an overcommitment that you're going to have to fumble to, re-grab the sword and get ready again. So, really like that as well. As far as my two hands on the sword, most of the time I actually find myself doing that these days, even though it wants to be a one-handed sword. It serves very well as your basic Dao, as far as wraps, chops, and all of that stuff works perfectly well with this. But a lot of the time I find myself, when I'm handling the sword, doing so with a relaxed backhand, and even my primary hand is not tight. I'm never tense when I use this sword. I want to keep everything, even with two hands, maneuverable and with enough leverage to where I can really move and change my grip as necessary. But you'll find that most of the time I've got my hand more in this position than this position. And when I thrust, a lot of the time if I want a good powerful thrust, I am pushing on the pommel more than I am grabbing and stabbing. So here, clear, thrust, push on that pommel, and I'm also ready to go into lots of nice, effortless stirring motions. So whereas I normally do that one-handed, here I can do that with two. Say, low attack through that leg, cut horizontal, thrust again, cut, reset. All very nicely done and doable because I got my backhand nice and relaxed. And of course, at any time, get those long-range snipes in there. So I very much like that as well. I find kind of intuitive to have these basic stances here for one-handed here here, 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 and here. This guard here is very ideal to set up presses and the like, where I'm pressing on the spine, laying the blade across, turning it into a thrust, doing whatever I need to do from there. This is very Miao Dao-esque, so there's a lot of this in Miao Dao, a lot of spine manipulation and rushing and pressing. A lot of that can work here too, pretty nicely. Your spine manipulation options are here. Maybe they're not quite as optimal as they are on a Miao Dao, but still, good way to brace and get in there and do some real damage, because at the end of the day, this is a war sword. So having nice techniques where you can really bull rush in there and do some damage, that's important. It's different than the Jian in that way. In two hands, here, 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 and face you guys for this one, here. A guard where it looks like I'm ready to lift. And two-handed holding positions, once again, my hand is relaxed. I'm ready to do pretty much anything I need to do from here, including letting go and having it be a regular one-handed cut. Those Gaislin type of options I was talking about. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, by the way. If you guys, you do Hema and you know the right word for it and I'm saying it wrong, please correct me. This is just the only kind of equivalent term I know, because I wouldn't know what that would be called in Chinese. But anyway, yeah, so that's all very intuitive with this sword. These guards here are pretty universal, just in terms of regular standard fighting stances, lower guards, hanging guard varieties, overhead guards, and guards where the sword is behind in this way, where it looks like I can do very instinctively outcuts. But any guard where the sword, and this is pretty universal, is non-dominant side forward, and the sword is either overhead or over to the other side, whichever the case may be. It looks like I'm ready to throw a downward cut. I could just as easily throw a fake down, go into a thrust, or throw a fake up, turn it into a down. So it's very good to throw feints from there. Low guards, very good to throw surprises in there, surprise deflections into horizontal cuts, actual straight rising cuts, when they're set up properly, can be very surprising. It's not a very common cut angle to come straight up. And of course, any hanging guard or liao cut that results in this position, going down to stab cha in a thrust that goes downward, going into a regular cut, into a thrust, very intuitive. So here, 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 all very intuitive angles, and they work very nicely. So those were a couple of notes on ways that I kind of find myself liking to use the sword: hand positioning, maneuvering, relaxed grip, not a tense thing at all, ready to adapt, ready to change orientation at any time, release my hand, wrap, chop, spine, whichever, deflect, come in, press. It's all there. And I have been really enjoying it lately. And I think it's a very good marriage of a whole lot of different things. So all in all, suffice it to say, the size of the blade is just large enough to be an authority, not just large enough per se, but like it's got enough of a thick spine here and enough of a forward authority to give a good robust cut, but also the maneuverability it needs to be able to do some of that finer point work and get that tip where you need it to be. The guard is sufficient. I don't find it's uncomfortable or anything. And a lot of time I'm in handshake grip, a lot of time I'm in saber grip, a lot of time I'll use a Jian grip if I need to. But overall, the point is relaxed grip, hands flexible, ready to do whatever they need to do. Let go here, let go there, and flip the blade, which you can do very nicely. Little pinch. Just overall, really versatile sword. These are just a couple of notes that I have found in my practice which really make this just a joy to work with, an absolute joy to work with. Everything that you do with any other kind of sword, I'm sure even if you do Japanese swordsmanship, I think you'll find this to be fairly fun to work with too. There's a history and a connection there, which of course you can definitely look up and research about. It's very fascinating. I think if you do HEMA or any kind of saber work, I think you can make a lot work with this as well. It's just an overall functional, utilitarian, no BS weapon from 1200 years ago that does the job. So these are all reasons why I am more than happy to gush about this sword and make my thoughts on it known and nerd out about something I've been really enjoying lately. So that's that. Hopefully that's been entertaining to watch if it wasn't too monotonous. And be making more regular videos again. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.